Hey, I'm glad to be with you this morning. I want to get right to it because we have a full day. I want to thank, Paul and Nicole for hosting us. This is their brainchild. And I know that the startup of like a gathering like this is not easy. There's a lot of details and planning. But you guys, I love your heart. And I love what you're trying to do to help the next generation to be innovative and to really forge forward in their dreams. So thanks for hosting us. I want to talk today about a theory that I've been cultivating this past year. Haven't really discussed it much in public, just been forming it. And it really emerged out of some of my own startup work. I'm known for the startup of NEWSONG, which is a faith community. And I launched it with 8 people, and it grew into thousands and multi-sites and all that. But I thought it wasn't really making the impact that I thought it should. But from a mega church perspective, it looked like it was because we're pretty huge. And we were reaching a target audience of like an average age of 28. But in that process, about 10 years ago, when we were about to buy a large piece of property off of Jamboree right down the street where Kia Motor Company now is, they outbid us, Kia. And these are my own brothers and sisters from Korea. And they outbid us, but it was a good thing because I think that saved us, because it really helped us to rethink about our purpose and our role as a faith community. But it also, I started recognizing things that I actually didn't necessarily like just building big churches. It's not that it's bad, but there was something more to it, I felt, that we weren't really addressing when it comes to society, that we weren't seeing systemic change. Because while someone may look at the numbers of attendance as success, I was actually looking at a different set of numbers. Like, is there 0 poverty in our city? Are there 0 foster children? Are there 0 addictions? So these I thought were more important numbers that we weren't really looking at as signs of systemic change. And so I was starting to get a little disgruntled with kind of how I pursued my life, to be honest, because I was taught that the greatest way to impact it was through this faith, church building type of thing. But I started exploring other startups. So I actually launched a couple more startups at that time. I launched a commodity trading firm with a group of friends. One was a Chicago board trade specialist, one of the best in the world, and he now runs the fund that we started. It's a mid-sized fund now, working mostly with Morgan Stanley, I believe, or it was JP Morgan. Which one failed? I'm not sure which one failed. It's the opposite. But he's doing really well now. Unfortunately, I'm not a partner anymore, but they're doing really well. And then I launched a consulting company based in Singapore called the Awaken Group with a McKinsey consultant and also one of the board members of McKinsey. And that's doing really well. So I had some experience in the for-profit startup, but was still feeling like that's not quite it either. And so then I launched XEALOTS, which is a leadership development group that I'm still a partner with. And I launched a couple of technology things. One was a failure, one is quite successful. So as I was looking at this, I was going, how does this all merge together? And as I was processing this year, just looking back at the last 10 years, I came up with a model that I thought may be helpful for you to consider as a process of innovation. I call it the evolution of innovation. A lot of times when you're in the middle of innovation, you don't know really where you are. And I think that engenders and breeds a lot of insecurity, and then you start losing confidence, and you can actually quit when you may be on the verge of a great discovery. And I find that you got that pick, and you're digging for gold, and then right before you hit it, you throw the pick away. It's like, oh, you're like an inch away. You just could have made it. And so I realized, again, as an older guy, that hey, there's a process for this. So let me share with you that process, and then I'd love to have feedback afterwards or tell me what you think about it. But I see there's probably about 8 stages of innovation, and at any given time, you're going to go back to these stages, but there seems to be this progression of how innovation occurs. The first phase, I call the echo stage, or the emulation stage. It's where you're just copying. A lot of times when you're young, you don't have any brilliant idea, so you're just looking at what other people are doing, and you're kind of doing their thing, and you copy a lot. Some of us from the Asian culture, we're really good at that. We copy some pretty good products over time. And so, that first stage of innovation oftentimes is copying. And a lot of times the challenge at this stage is actually where you get comfortable, where maybe you're making a living. So a lot of people just kind of eke it out there. They're cool with that, and they're in the echo stage all their life. They're just repeating something. But I don't think that's where this generation is supposed to be. I really believe we're at the point of the greatest transformation potentially in history when it comes to government, economics, spiritually speaking, and justice orientation. There's major things happening. So I don't believe that we're called just to echo and to emulate what others have said that we're supposed to do, and then how we're supposed to do it. The second stage, I think, is what I call the experimentation phase. So if the first stage is more like a baby, where we're copying what our parents do, and it's normal, it's not necessarily bad. The next stage is experimentation, where you're in adolescence, and you're trying to find yourself. You realize what your parents did, maybe what people taught you, is not exactly you. And so you're trying to figure out who you are. The pursuit is discovery of your identity. So you're experimenting many different things. At this point, a mantra that's important to remember is a mantra that I learned from a guy named Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. Are you guys familiar with them? One of my clients I worked with is a guy named Dan Lin. Dan Lin was asked to be president of Warner Brothers when he was like in his late 20s, early 30s. He turned it down. All right, and he actually worked with Scorsese in developing the Departed movie. Scorsese gave him credit when he got the Academy Award. He also then did Sherlock Holmes movies, and recent hits were the Lego movie, and then Batman Lego. So who he got on board got these guys, Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, who were the directors of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. You guys remember that animation? So he loved the writing in that, the creativity in that. So he goes, man, I want to get them for Lego. And so, anyways, Dan says when he brought him on, they challenged him. Because Dan comes from the stock of a lot of us Asians, right? We're like Harvard, Yale, he's Harvard, Wharton, and he's brilliant, right? And so his thing was all about perfection. You know, everything I do has to be perfect. He says when Phil Lord came and Christopher came on board, they actually said their mantra was the exact opposite. Their mantra was fail often, fail fast. Huh. And I said, that's actually really good. You have to be willing to do that, especially in this experimentation phase. You're not going to maybe have it all together, so you just have to try a lot of different things and explore it. In the experimentation phase, I found one of the aspects that's important to continue to experiment is to place yourself and immerse yourself in different dissonant cultures. The more you're in different cultures, the more you're going to find that there's a sparking of creativity. So when you're experimenting, you're gonna find this lack of fuel and energy and innovation if you're in a homogeneous climate or ethos that you're accustomed to. So it's really important for you to step out into something that's very different, and you'll just notice your brain starts getting activated differently. Because you're coming in from more of a fringe and an outsider perspective, which actually leans into muscles and a way of thinking that's quite different that will help you in innovation. So there's an experimentation phase where you just try a lot of things. Fail often, fail fast. I think if you can move out of that, then you move to the phase I call emergence phase. Emergence is where, as you're experimenting, things are codified in terms of who you are. You go, oh, that felt kind of good. I actually like that. And then you're noticing yourself like tireless. It's because something's clicking for you. It's like the people you're working with, the strength that you have, you go, I like this. So in emergence phase, the pursuit is discovery. You're really trying to discover like who you are at that stage, and you're identifying what those things are. You're codifying it. And I see that's quite different when you're looking at your identity, your work as opposed to your natural essence or your original design. A lot of my work I do, and I know Mike does, is not based upon just like occupational pursuit as being the end all. We see occupation. I don't know if Mike does, but for me, I'm sure he would, because I think I know what you're thinking. But I think a lot of times your occupation is more like your piece of clothing, where you can express yourself through a piece of clothing, but it does not necessarily define you, because as time goes, you're probably going to shift your fashion. So you're not, hopefully, right? You're not going to still maybe dress like some people do, past it. You're going to shift with the fashion. So you're not defined necessarily, but you express yourself through that. But again, I think what's happening in our culture, because the evaluation of our parents and our society has been upon these job titles. But we don't have that loyalty anymore, because you're a 20-year-old and you've already had 3 different companies you work for. So there's no loyalty. Your jobs have changed. So where are you going to find your identity and your sense of significance? It's going to be through your identity, living out your identity, your original design. So in the emergence stage, you actually start to discover your original design, the things that make you you, the things that make you feel energized and alive. And if you can get that down before you're 35, you're way ahead of the game. Way ahead of it. Because most people are trying to still figure that out. They're still looking at the clothing. And they're just trying on these different pieces of clothes. They still haven't figured out their original design. You eventually want to get to the point where your life is emerging out of your design, and then you find you can probably work many different types of jobs. As long as you can live out your design, these characteristics that make you you. Does that make sense? Okay, so there's this emergence stage. And then the next stage after the emergence is the expertise stage. So after you start to codify and identify your identity, you start rolling it. You're developing the muscles. So you moved into adulthood, and it's starting to feel mature. You're developing expertise. There's a confidence with that. You're growing in that. You're making bolder moves because you're feeling it. You're becoming this like elite athlete, this professional athlete. It's a pretty powerful stage. It's where it's almost, the challenge is you think maybe you made it. But man, you just experienced the first level of Mount Everest. It's like the base camp. There's still like this whole thing, but for some people, they start to settle here again. Because you think, yeah, I got my first measure of success and it's feeling awesome. It's important at that stage to think, is there anything actually more? Because again, there may be a piece that you're missing because you never knew that. Once you start breathing this atmosphere of success, your oxygen intake's different. What you're able to see is different. You have a maturity now. So it's important to review and assess at this point and not to settle at this stage either. Because it's going to be easy to do that. But this expertise stage is the 10,000 hours that Malcolm Gladwell talks about. And once you play about 10,000 hours in, you get to that sense of high skill levels where you're an expert. Now, the next stage after expertise is entropy. It sounds crazy, right? What's entropy? It's like, okay, so you get to the expertise, you go, I made it, I did my dream, man, I'm here. But then suddenly, boom, an unexpected hit, financial, a meltdown, a divorce, a betrayal, an embezzlement, whatever. You didn't expect it. And just suddenly it can ruin you. It's like, dude, where did this come from? I find this is so common. I work with professional athletes. I work with the top level C execs in some of the companies that you know. I work in the creative industry. I can tell you almost every one of them that I know, if you know their story, they'll tell you they took a major hit, they got blindsided somehow, and they barely survived. That's when they actually call me, is when they're in death mode. They go, dude, I have no idea what I'm doing. What I thought I knew I had together, I don't know. Because everything's hitting the fan. And so at that stage, it's entropy, where you find that there's this re-examination of what you thought you were. It's really a hard stage. It's what I call the desert stage or the barrenness stage. A lot of people at this stage actually quit. It happens in marriages, actually. You know, usually if you're going to get really intimate with somebody and close, you're going to hit a desert stage where everything's re-examined. They surprise you some way with what they said or what they did, and you're really looking like, do I really want to stay in this the rest of my life? It's what we do in relationships as well as in our work. But in this entropy stage, it's an important stage. Because when it does it, it forces you to reevaluate why you're doing the things you're doing. Is it really matching up to what you really call success? It's huge. You don't want to miss this moment because it's a valuing stage. There's people who say that there's a group of monastics, I believe, they said, always keep your death before your eyes. And it's because your death will often help you to understand your priorities. So if you're on your deathbed, the things that really matter to you are going to be really real at that moment, recognizable. And so at this stage of entropy, the importance is to really re-examine your values and your success metrics. And then not to quit. And that's really important because you're knowing that there's a next stage. This is a stage that's important for you to get to the place where maybe your destiny will be fulfilled. So let it be. It's like it's almost like instead of trying to run away from it, be in that moment. You know how sometimes people, they go through a painful, tragic moment and they just try to move on. They've never really dealt with what went wrong. They really tend to be superficial. So if you're going through pain, there may be a purpose to it. Let it kind of sit there and examine yourself on what's really happening. Because in the barrenness, the beauty will be highlighted. There are hues of color that you would have missed in the lush green. You would never have noticed it. So that's why it's important to look around you in the desert. What are the emerging colors? What are the things that are significant that you really want to hold on to? And then start to own it. And then the next stage in the barrenness, by the way, while you're in the entropy stage, what you're going to find is that you move beyond just like trying to persevere to actually trying to find joy. Because this is the level of maturation that's really, I think, it's another level. Like undergraduate is perseverance. Graduate school is, can you have joy no matter what you're doing? See, that's called maturity, because a parent will do things that they don't love to do. You're changing diapers at 2 in the morning. You're listening to teenage kids that don't have any clue about what they're saying to you right now. And they're disrespecting you. So what has to happen is, again, can you have joy in the middle of some things that you don't really like? I think that's another level of maturation. Because joy is not found, again, just in my work, my piece of clothing, my uniform I'm doing. There's a deeper joy that you can find no matter what you're doing. It's the Nelson Mandela perspective when he's in Robin's Island, and he's in a small cell that none of us would ever dream of living in for decades. But Nelson Mandela, he called Robin's Island Robin's University. And prisoners said it became Robin's University. That's how they would describe it. He taught religion, he taught philosophy, he taught poetry, he taught literature. You see, it's actually a mindset. It's a deep thing. Maybe too deep for 9 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so entropy. So after entropy, you have this highlighting of your uniqueness. You want to take that. But in the desert is the next stage. You'll find it if you're looking. It's what we call the elixir. This is good stuff, Mike. I know you're loving this, man. Just give me credit for that in your book. The elixir is like that thing that causes you to be sustained. And that causes you life. It gives you vitality and energy. It's really important for you. What is that elixir? Regardless of what job you're doing, this gives you life. You're going to find out a lot of things when you're younger you thought were the things that give you life. It can even be a person, actually. They're not doing it for you. So people resort to dogs, right? Resort to dog, but eventually the dog doesn't do it for you. So what is it that's going to give you the elixir? For me, it was like a spiritual journey. I come from a very cognitive, intellectual background of spirituality. And so I went to graduate school, studied Hebrew, studied Greek, and made sure that I knew apologetics, how to defend the faith. And so I knew the intellectual approach to faith, but I never understood the spiritual dynamic of it without being arrogant. So I saw a lot of these people very arrogant in their approach of how they did spirituality. But they sound like they knew it all at the time. Or they were always trying to fight culture. I always thought that was kind of weird. Why are we called a fight culture? Why can't we also just notice the beautiful things of culture? And so, anyways, over time, I found that for me, the elixir was understanding my relationship with the Spirit and the energy I can get from the Spirit. And so it was in the desert place that, man, that was the thing that changed everything for me. And it changed my relationship with my wife, with my children, with how I viewed my work, and how I view my future. So anyways, that's for me. But what's your elixir? If you identify that in the desert, hold on to that and drink of that regularly. After the elixir, you then move on to the stage of elegance. The elegance is pretty beautiful. What happens is you drink it, and you're humbled. You see clearly now. You've gone through it, man. There's an authority now you carry. And then you know what's going to sustain you. No matter what people say to you, praise or criticism, it doesn't matter. Because you know who you are. You got the elixir, right? You move then to elegance. And the elegance is all about the dance. There's a really great philosopher named Alan Watts. And he says, he begs the question about the life as a journey. And he says life is really probably not a journey like you hear from religion or from a lot of people. I mean, there's components that may be. But he says maybe we should define life more like a dance. And I got that because, if you think about the future too much, you start to worry. And you're going to do that as an innovator. You have to think about that. It's a normal thing. But if you meditate, obsess too much about it, you start to fret. You get stressed out, man. If you look back at the past too much, you start living a life of regret. You hear people do this all the time. It's what I call the WSC disease. The woulda, shoulda, coulda. You hear people talk that way. They can't get past their mistake or their failure. What's really hard is to pay attention to the now. You see, this is the issue, I think, of the next generation, the Z generation, and the millennials, and even the boomers, is we're very distracted. One of the unique qualities of leadership for the future and innovation, I believe, is to pay attention to the moment. Because if you don't know the moment, you can't define the moment, how can you create any product that really fits that moment? Because even if you're going to determine the future, you've got to see where it is. So you move it forward into the future. So to me, this is a really critical stage. It's elegance. It's actually learning to dance in the moment, to see the beauty. And this is not just in terms of your work. What I'm referring to also is your dance of life. So you're building the superhighway. Everybody loves running on your superhighway of your product or your company. They enjoy what you're doing. But you know what happens is, if we're not dancing, we have sinkholes going on right underneath that superhighway. And suddenly, boom again, it's the crash. Because you didn't pay attention to the dance. You forgot what you really valued. It wasn't just your work output and the innovation. It was people. It was the Elixir. Dancing. What do you need to do today to dance? To pay attention to the things that are most valuable to you. And then the final stage is what I call exponential. Exponential. Exponential is like when you start to dance, things just start to scale to me. If it's supposed to scale, awesome. But exponential may not be just in terms of your financial reward. It may actually be your fulfillment of life. You can be a rich person and make $24,000 a year. You can live in another country and make $24,000 a year and live like a millionaire. So exponential doesn't necessarily mean numerical in terms of just final profit. But exponential means what you valued in the desert that you're starting to drink from, you're seeing that fulfillment. And then it's really up to whatever energy you believe in to scale that. It's not our responsibility. Our job is to be faithful with our design. When we know who we are, stay in the desert, to stay faithful and true to that. Otherwise, you start to live a hypocrisy. And the incongruence of your public display and your private knowledge of who you really are, that incongruence actually leads you to stress, workaholism, and addiction. So today I just want to encourage you in your innovation stage, wherever you may be, as you think about this evolution of innovation, and then leave you with this thought that encouraged me and inspired me. There's a Mexican proverb that said, they thought they buried us, but they didn't know that we were seeds. So the seeds in your life, those little seeds of innovation, keep watering them. They have purpose.